Welcome back, you guys. Tonight we have a Glock 20, very interesting build. We're going to be doing this a little bit different. We're going to take this a little bit slower. Want to give you guys the background story of how this came to me, kind of give you the feel for what we're trying to do, and of course we're going to talk about kind of where we are, and that's really what it comes down to is where are we starting in this project. So first and foremost, I'm going to put this on the stand. We've got some talking to do. We've got some pictures. I did do some video stuff outside, and I'm going to kind of blend that into this video here a little bit better because we're going to be able to see it just a little bit better. Most of that other content that I filmed, I did with my iPhone, so hopefully it looks okay. We'll just go from there. So the story behind this is local customer called me and they said, hey, I got your number through a local gun shop, which was Atlas Firearms. I'll post a link to those guys. Since they recommended me, I'll certainly recommend them in this video. They're local to us here in North Carolina. So customer walked into the store. They, from what I gathered, they picked this slide up, okay? So I don't know the entire background story, but it was a new gun. They took it somewhere. They picked it up from said person who did the work, went back to the store to kind of give them a feel for where we, what it kind of looks like now and where they are now, because they weren't, obviously they weren't happy with it, and that's where I came into the picture. They recommended me. This individual ended up calling me same day. I had them come over. We are typically by what would be appointment only, so people don't just usually show up. So called me, set up an appointment, came by. And I really didn't know what we were getting into. Over the phone, I didn't know whether it was like optic cut gone bad or whether it was like some kind of a side window somebody drilled out with a drill press, which we've seen before in some of the build videos. So I really just didn't know where we were in this process, because some stuff that's really, really bad, I'm just like, no, I'm not a miracle man here. I can't perform miracles on things. So I told the guy to come by. He came by, we dropped it off, and we did, while he was here dropping it off, we discussed kind of where we are. So it's cut for a Sig Romeo. We'll start with the back. So it's cut for a Sig Romeo. No curvature to the front like you would typically see with like something like a Trijicon or a Venom. It's just basically a straight cut. Little loose, not too bad for what it is. So I can't complain about that, a ton. It's not like they went into the plunger hole. It's not like they drilled into something else or cut it super deep or cut it too close to the dovetail in the back where the post isn't going to hold. It really isn't that bad as far as the rear section. Now, and I don't believe that was really the issue altogether with the process. It was when they had the process done through this other vendor, it was the cuts on the front. So up here towards the front, we're going to transition over to the other video. You're going to notice that we have a series of 3 holes on each side, which are cut on the edge of the slide and into the barrel as well. So some of the things that you're going to notice here is the slide itself doesn't appear as though they were precision cut into the slide. So if we're just taking a look at the slide before we get to the barrel, we're going to kind of notice that it looks pretty rough. As the individual cut into the slide, it started walking on them. It looks very similar to what you would find with like a drill press, maybe a low-end mill that has a lot of chatter to it, just doesn't have that rigidity there, like you're getting with the Tormax and some of the Haas's and some of the other stuff. So yeah, I mean, that was definitely one of the very first things I noticed was we're going to have to do something with this. Even if we colored it, it really just wouldn't look that great overall. So you guys can kind of see that on both sides. Now, one of the other things that you're going to notice on the internal of the slide, if we haven't already shown that in the little clip there, is we have to take into consideration the correction on here, because I don't know if they've been cut into the slide at the same angle on both sides. So as we get a little bit farther into the correction process and how we're going to actually do a correction, we have to think about that. Because if we cut a certain pattern in there, we try to kind of open that up a little bit more to kind of kill that hole and make it look a little bit better, a little bit more uniform. We have to take into consideration the way in which it was cut and the angle in which it was cut to make sure we're not going to have some tails on the inside. So hopefully we'll be able to see that a little bit better. I'll demonstrate that just a little bit better here. So let's talk about the barrel. The barrel itself has the triple holes cut in the inside. Obviously, also what we're going to note on the barrel is that it looks like the bit walked. It looks like there's a lot of drill with kind of like an offset, kind of where the, you know what I'm saying? Kind of where the bit kind of moved to the right or moved to the left and kind of took a gouge and then it kind of maybe straightened itself back out. So that's one of the things that we first notice when looking at it. Obviously, those are the chips on the outside, which is pretty common with a hard Glock barrel like that. So that one of the reasons we obviously don't take the service in typically to do barrel porting because of accuracy, but when we do, we use the laser specifically because of that. So some of the old videos that we've done a long time ago and fluted some barrels, that was a learning process of that's a no-no. Just don't do that. You might get away on some of the other barrels that are out there, but the hardened steel barrels seem to flake. So honestly, you just really want to cut those with a laser. It's more precise, and overall, it's just a better cut hole. So guys, where we are with the correction on this is we want to obviously fix the slide. We want to obviously fix the barrel, but how do we do this? How do we go about doing this? So we're gonna kind of navigate these into two different pieces here, and we're gonna take the barrel out. We're just gonna set it aside so we don't get a weird focus here. So as we kind of already discussed, this was cut in here at an angle on both sides. One of the biggest issues that we have is if this was cut, say, straight down like this, and we tried to turn it up on its edge and cut it, that may be fine, but when we repeat the pattern over here, if this wasn't cut straight down and maybe it was offset like this and it was cut more like this, okay, instead of straight up, then what's going to happen is when we put this in here and we roll this and we cut a lot or a little notch through here, and then we look in the inside, what you're going to see is that we're going to have tails left over. So that's going to kind of play a big factor in the angle of which we cut this slot, how big we cut this slot, and how wide we cut this slot, because we don't want to just keep cutting wider and wider. If we cut wide on the top, we cut wide on the side, yes, we will remove the hole. But the other thing is that it's going to cause a problem because we're just making this really big hole. Now, the other thought process here, which is what we had with the customer, was why don't we, when it's on its side, why don't we do some sort of a step down and cut, and then we'll roll it to the top. We'll do some kind of step over and cut, and we'll make some kind of an angled based correction instead of just a slot in there. The issue you run into, once again, is we see a hole right here on this edge, but the inside of that hole, because the wall is so thick, is actually like down here. So that means if we were to start like this and cut in and across and up, we would have to cut almost all the way down to the Glock to actually remove the bottom side of the tail of the hole. Otherwise, we're gonna just cut across there, and we're gonna have these like line. You're gonna see these lines cut through there. Same thing on the top. So we'd have to cut so far into the top in order to remove that, and once again, we don't know if the actual left and right side actually match each other. So best course of correction here is to put it in, put it like this, kind of cut like an oval kidney bean type shape, a little bit in front, a little bit to the back. I would probably take the precautionary steps of doing the worst side first, and what that would mean is create the drawing, run it, pull the cutter out, eyeball it, okay, it looks good, flip it to the less of two evils here and cut the backside or whatever one is left, because if you get the worst first, then you're probably going to nail the other one and not have any problems. So that's the course of correction with these. We do want to add a couple additional things. We do want to add a top window. We do want to add a side shape. So we're going to come down. We're going to remove the Austria, the Glock, and the 20 over at an angle 45, right straight off the front. So we're going to do a little bit of side shape here. We are going to give it a little bit more detail. So there's several reasons that we're doing that. One, we want to remove text. Two, we want to remove some weight. This is a super heavy slide. The 20 and 21s are just massive. So that's kind of it for the slide work. Top window, shave side, correction. Obviously, we'll do a cleanup back here. We'll do a Cerakote job on it. So that's kind of where we are with that. Let's set that to the side. Let's get back to the barrel work here. So the idea behind the barrel originally was to run an oval window and just cut a slot. Right, slot slide, slot barrel, call it a day. Seems like a good idea. The issue that we run into with that is, since it's a 10 millimeter because it's a G20, I don't know if a slot on this side and a slot on that side, we can see if we can get both here at the same time, is really going to hold up to what we want it to hold up to, meaning longevity of slide, pressure release. We want to make sure we're not losing back pressure off of it for accuracy. So there happen to be a lot of contributing factors and problematic issues. If we do something incorrectly, we could crack the barrel. We could have issues with the way it ejects out through the slide if it just doesn't look right. We could have pressure loss. So there's a lot of things. I don't think that that's what we're gonna do. Originally, when the customer was here, that is what we discussed, match the two. I think what we're gonna probably do is circle, 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 individually spacing apart. So if you were to cut something like an oval through here, the width of the oval on the left and the right hand side is going to end up being the same, and so is it on the 12 to 6 o'clock side. So in other words, if you were to actually cut just a big circular hole here, it's going to end up being the same width as what these holes are, left to right, 12 to 6. Why not just punch a hole, punch a hole, punch a hole, make sure they're separated individually here, keep that strength between the holes, allowing pressure to leave individual holes and not necessarily leave a big cavity here as with the other side. So we're not going to necessarily be cutting anything any larger, but I think that we're going to be looking for a little bit more precision work. So we're going to try to do that on both sides. I think we're going to, overall, the plan right now is to get to the point where we can kind of get the holes big enough to correct some of these chips that are in there. We want to make sure that we peel those off, and we don't want those to be an issue for when we do our hard coating. So we're going to send this out for a hard coating. We want to get the barrel back to what would be somewhat of a factory appearance. We do want it to be a nice looking weapon in the end. So that's kind of the idea. We're going to be doing a hole, and I think then at that point in time, we're going to see what we can come up with. Now, something to keep in mind, and I tell you guys this a lot when you're watching my videos, is this is a correction build, okay? So a lot of you guys go, well, why don't you do this or why don't you do that? You have to remember that there's a lot of contributing issues to why we take a path or a course of correction, okay? So that's just how I want to word it. That's what I want to let you guys know. And that is, you know, right now we have pretty much a crappy slide that looks like trash, that probably could be coated, probably could be shot 100 times, filled with some black carbon in there. And at the end of the day, probably wouldn't really be able to tell it's too awful, but it's definitely not a show gun, and obviously it's not really that presentable overall. And we honestly, we don't really know what we're gonna get with functionality with them being cut at different angles with a drill bit and different size holes. So I don't know what we're gonna get there overall. So we are gonna try to correct those. But guys, always keep that in mind, okay? Get that idea in your mind that we are correcting something. We are going behind somebody already that has already made a mistake. So a lot of our decision-making abilities that we're going to be choosing here is a course of correction. So guys, Tormach 770, we're going to go ahead and get that work cut out on the slide. We're going to go ahead and jump over to our laser. We're going to go ahead and port these out. More than likely, I'm going to try to snap a picture. I'm going to try to put this in here, get a feel for what does it look like when the slide's been ported before we actually touch the barrel. And we're going to see if we can kind of get a feel for how great of a correction we actually made here. Let's see what we come up with. All right, guys, let's take a moment here and see exactly how this came out in the end as our final build as a complete pistol. So the local customer ended up bringing us by the frame, the light, the optic. Want to kind of just put it all back together, show it as a complete build. Now, as you guys had seen at the beginning of the video, there was a lot of damage here. We ended up having some holes in the barrel, holes in the slide. We ended up working around that. And as I told you guys kind of at the beginning, it's kind of one of those things that we would normally build some sort of a pattern, but when we're working around something, sometimes it's not quite as nice because we have obstacles, okay? So some of those patterns have to flow around and make those corrections on what's already there. So that's something to take into consideration. Shave side, edged window. Of course, we have that barrel. We're obviously going to add some pictures to this one. I give you a little bit more of a visual with a still picture outside. Shows just a little bit better than inside. Top window, we have that bronze colored barrel. Real nice overall. Really pleased with it. Humidity's really high here in North Carolina right now. So we're going to end up seeing a lot of fingerprints and some other things that are on there. But nonetheless, really nice. We ended up going with the Glock gray coating on the slide. He had the frame sent out, I think, to Zev. Don't quote me on that. I'll put some notes in the field below. Pretty sure that went out to Zev. Zev did that. Yeah, I'm going to be a little reserved on the comment on the hand stippling. Seen a lot that are kind of out there, and I don't know, it is what it is. So that's kind of what we're going to roll with. But overall, pretty cool. One of the only 10mm G20s that we've done to date. We've handful of them, but none of them have been a port and a correction. So that's always something to add to the list of things that we have done. And guys, I always encourage you to reach out to us if you find yourself with some sort of a firearm that has a little bit of damage, some scratches, some wear and tear. You want to have that somehow revamped and revitalized and redone, and you kind of just want to get that behind you and get into something a little bit more custom. We might be that company for you. We might be that guy that can actually sort those issues out and make something that works just a little bit better and flows just a little bit better. So guys, like the video, share the video, let other people know about the content. That's kind of why we put these videos out. We want to let you guys know exactly the services that we do offer, our skill level of what you should expect when you're getting something back. It just happens to be kind of an overview of us as a company. We do have an NCEngravers or Welcome to NCEngravers video that has a lot of content in there. I've told you guys that on some of our other videos. There's a ton of stuff in there. More than likely there's something that you have not seen, even if you've seen all of our videos. So we do recommend that. We will post a link at the end of this video for that one. So it'll just give you a lot of different content that we've done over the years. And definitely reach out to us. On the webpage there's the contacts tab. Use that contacts tab. Let us know a little bit more about what you want to have done. And we'll try to get you a quote turned back out. We'll let you know what's going on. We've got some big gun shows coming up. We've got one coming up in Virginia at Chantilly. So hopefully we'll see a bunch of you guys there. We'll get you some other people onto our Instagram account and some things like that, and we'll see what we come up with.